I'm continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. Right now I am continuing to read the twin narratives of 1 Kings and 2 Chronicles. My last video was 1 Kings chapter 5, in which Solomon has requested and gained Hiram, king of Sidon, help in procuring supplies for building the temple. I now turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 2 because this contains the same narrative of Solomon talking to Hiram. Before I read it, though, I will mention this chapter does have Joseph Smith translations. What the Joseph Smith translation is, this is an inspired translation of the Bible done by Joseph Smith to correct or restore those portions that had been lost over the years. We will get to back to that in a moment. Let us begin reading chapter 2 of 2 Chronicles. Solomon engages Huram of Tyre to supply timber for the temple. Laborers organized to do the work. Sorry, I called him Hiram of Sidon. Tyre and Sidon were the sister cities, so he's the king of Tyre. Here we go. And Solomon determined to build an house for the name of the Lord, and an house for his kingdom. And Solomon told out 70,000 men to bear burdens, and 80,000 to hew in the mountain, and 3,600 to oversee them. And Solomon sent to Hiram the king of Tyre, saying, As thou didst deal with David my father, and didst send him cedars to build him an house to dwell therein, even so deal with me. Behold, I build an house to the name of the Lord my God, to dedicate it to him, and to burn before him sweet incense, and for the continual shewbread, and for the burnt offerings morning and evening on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the solemn feasts of the Lord our God. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. And the house which I build is great, for great is our God above all gods. But who is able to build him an house, seeing the heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain him? Who am I then, that I should build him a house, save only to burn sacrifice before him? Send me now therefore a man cunning to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in iron, and in purple, and crimson, and blue, and that can skill to grave with the cunning men that are with me in Judah and in Jerusalem, whom David my father did provide. Send me also cedar trees, fir trees, and algum trees out of Lebanon, for I know that thy servants can skill to cut timber in Lebanon, and behold, my servants shall be with thy servants, even to prepare me timber in abundance. For the house which I am about to build shall be wonderful great. And behold, I will give to thy servants, the hewers that cut timber, 20,000 measures of beaten wheat, and 20,000 measures of barley, and 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of oil. Let's pause a moment here. This is, again, just like in 2 Kings. Sorry. Just like in 1 Kings, he's saying, look, I want to build a house to God. But I don't have all the materials, and my people aren't as skilled in certain portions of the work. And so, could you send us the people who are skilled as well as get us some material? Now he mentions 3 trees in 1 Kings. It mentioned the cedars of Lebanon and the fir trees, but here this also mentions algum trees. And there's no footnote on this. I have no idea what an algum tree is. So just want to say that they do mention this third type of tree. But the thing that I found really interesting here is this mention, seeing the heaven and the heaven of heavens. What exactly does that mean? What I think this is talking about is the term heaven can speak of where God dwells, but it can also refer to the atmosphere around the earth. And so the heaven, when it says seeing the heaven, that's talking about the atmosphere around the earth. And then it says, and the heaven of heavens. So this is either talking about where God lives, heaven, or it could also be talking about space, outer space. We have the atmosphere as the heaven of the earth. But then all planets have, in a sense, heavens because they all have atmosphere. And the heaven of heavens would be the space between. So is this a reference to outer space? Is this showing us that the ancients understood astrology a lot better than we want to think? Or is it just referencing where God lives? Or could it be both? I find it very interesting. But other than that, we don't have much else to say here. Now, this was the first 10 verses. Before I continue on, let us go to our Joseph Smith translation. Because the Joseph Smith made some corrections to verses 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. So let us just read this here. Verse 3, this is the opening of Solomon's letter. Solomon sent to Hiram, it's Hiram here, with a U instead of an I. So, but, as thou didst deal with David my father, and didst send him cedars to build him a house to dwell therein, even so deal with me. But Joseph Smith removes the even so deal with me. And then he adds to the beginning of verse 2, therefore, behold, I build an house to the name of the Lord my God. Not a major change there, but then verse 4, we add this. The last sentence in verse 4 says, after listing all the sacrifices, says, this is an ordinance forever to Israel. Joseph Smith corrected this, says now, and this ordinance shall be kept in Israel forever. Now I think that's a better translation there. I'm going to build this house, we're going to do these sacrifices, and they will be an ordinance forever in Israel. Verse 5 states here, and the house which I build is great, for great is our God above all gods. Joseph Smith translation says, and the house which I build shall be a great house, for great is the Lord our God above all gods. Minor grammatical change there. It looks like verse 7 is again just a minor grammatical change. He lists all the stuff working in iron and brass and purple and blue, and that. I do appreciate this change because it says, and that can skill to grave, and he changes it to have skill, and that have skill to grave with the cunning man. And then in verse 8, after talking about the trees, for I know that thy servants can skill to cut timber in Lebanon, and behold, my servants shall be with thy servants. Again, changing can skill to have skill to cut timber. And behold, my servants I will send with thy servants. So, the Joseph Smith translations here are only minor grammatical corrections. Nothing significant in meaning. But I do like pointing out all the changes that he made, because I think even those minor ones show us that he was a prophet. Even those minor changes, it makes the text easier to read, and I appreciate it. Anyways, let us continue. Let us finish this out. Verse 11. Then Huram, the king of Tyre, answered in writing, which he sent to Solomon, because the Lord hath loved his people, he hath made thee king over them. Hiram said moreover, blessed be the Lord God of Israel that made heaven and earth, who hath given to David the king a wise son, endued with prudence and understanding, that might build an house for the Lord, and an house for his kingdom. And now I have sent a cunning man, endued with understanding of Hiram my fathers, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre, skillful to work in gold and in silver and brass and iron and stone and in timber and purple and blue and in fine linen and in crimson, also to grave any manner of graving, and to find out every device which shall be put to him, with the cunning men, and with the cunning men of my lord David thy father. Now therefore the wheat and the barley, the oil and the wine, which my Lord hath spoken of, let him send unto his servants. And we will cut wood out of Lebanon as much as thou shalt need, and we will bring it to thee in floats by sea to Joppa, and thou shalt carry it up to Jerusalem. And Solomon numbered all the strangers that were in the land of Israel after the numbering wherewith David his father had numbered them. And they were found 150,000 and 3,600. And he set 70,010 of them to be bearers of burdens, and 80,000 to be hewers in the mountain, and 3,600 overseers he set the people to work. Here's a couple of interesting, a few quick notes. First, I appreciate that Hiram of Tyre, he's sending him a man who is skilled in all these things, but he makes a point of saying he's not a complete heathen. He is born of an Israelite mother. He is half Israelite. And I honestly think that, I've always liked Hiram. We don't get a lot about him in the scriptures, but I liked him. He was a good friend of David. He helped Solomon out, and he obviously has respect for God. Now, he is a heathen. He worships his own gods, but he has respect for God. And he even seems to accept that God is the greatest. But he likes his local deities. He has his personal deities that he likes. But at the same time, he will admit that God is the best. And out of respect to God, he chose a man who was half Israelite, so that it wasn't a stranger who was working on the temple. This also shows us that the Israelites were not quite as faithful as they should have been in keeping the law of Moses, because they weren't supposed to be intermarrying with the Sidonians and the people of Tyre. So, but they were, and there was blending between the peoples. But the last thing that I want to note here is that it mentions all these workers. But according to verse 17, these were the strangers, meaning they weren't Israelite. He didn't take all the Israelites and put them to work. He's in a sense doing what Egypt did to Israel, in that he's taking the foreigners and forcing them to work for him. And according to the law of Moses, this was not good. The stranger had the same legal rights and protections as an Israelite did. There was no difference between the two. And so this again shows us, I think Solomon knew that if he tried to force Israelites to work, he probably would have a fight on his hands. But I find it interesting. Just these little details. We can see, as I said before, Solomon didn't start off praying to God, and he turned to God only after he started seeing the blessings. And we can see he's not, even though he is a wise man, and this is somewhat of a prudent course of action, I don't know if it was the best course of action, as things will show later on, but this has been long enough. We'll stop that here, and see you in the next one. We'll be back in 1 Kings.